throw that down there. In today's video, I'm just going to share with you some of the publications I use that helped accelerate my career in finance. This isn't necessarily private equity related, but my whole career across banking, private equity, funds management. Anyway, here's one of them. It's the Financial Times. It's got to be one of the best financial newspapers currently being published. I read it every day to try and get across what's been happening in the markets and who's doing what, who's who in the zoo, moves and changes, as well as any deals that I should be aware of that might be on the boil or might be coming up in the pipeline. When I'm not getting my daily updates from the newspapers, I love to read more in-depth articles from The Economist or listen to the podcast while I'm walking the dog. The Economist is a great publication in my opinion. I really like the way that they communicate a clear message, and it's something I try to do in my work as well, is get inspiration from them in terms of making graphs or figures that communicate a really clear message, have the story together, linking the figures to the text as well, which sometimes isn't done very well in investment banks, I don't think. Sometimes I think they like to obscure the message with complicated figures and various text when actually the story is very simple, and I think we could all learn from The Economist and become 1% better. Now, the next book you're not going to find recommended probably on any other channels, but it's this little gem which I bought I think back in 2008 when it was published. It's called Damn, It Feels Good to Be a Banker. I bought this book when I was considering what career I wanted to go into. I was so caught up in the investment banking image. I thought that was kind of the pedestal of finance. I thought if I could become an investment banker, I would have made it. I'd make so much money. I'd get all this praise heaped on me, and I'd just be really successful. Anyway, after a few years in finance, I realized that's not the case at all. And I think a lot of people buy that message. And this book is a really good kind of satirical take on the industry. It's a great way to find some grounding, to realize that you're not the master of the universe as an investment banker, despite what they would like you to believe. They do play a role, don't get me wrong, and it is a great career for some people, but certainly I like to look back on this book and laugh about the naivety of my youth, I suppose. Next up is the Investment Banking Textbook by Paul and Paul. That's Paul Rosenbaum and Paul Pearl. I've spoken about this book before on my channel. This is a great practitioner's guide to investment banking. It takes you through all the steps involved in kind of doing a whole bunch of core competencies in investment banking. So leverage buyouts, LBOs, M&A, mergers and acquisitions, as well as IPOs, initial public offerings, kind of the core components, I guess, of investment banking. I like the way it steps you through all of the different deal processes, some of the key things to think about, and I really think it adds value very quickly if you're new to a role and you want to get your head around kind of where you should begin looking at, say, an IPO candidate. I really like it. I think it's a great resource. I still refer to it quite often, even today, if I want to clarify something or just go back over some component that I'm looking at. Let me just get this next one. This is Poor Charlie's Almanack. Now, Poor Charlie, of course, refers to Charlie Munger, who is Warren Buffett's right-hand man. Poor Charlie, I think, sometimes doesn't get a lot of the credit for building Berkshire Hathaway, but he is an absolute genius. Love reading this book. It kind of goes through all of his distilled knowledge and kind of learning and thinking. There's just heaps of gems in here. It's laid out really like quite strange in the way it's laid out. Great to have on a coffee table. I love just flicking through it in the evenings, finding a quote there. And if you're interested in kind of Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett, I think it's a great resource. You can learn so much from them. Just reading their annual reports, some of their snippets of how they think. I love it. It's great. Am I boring you? I hope not. This is kind of fun. This one, Excel 2016, VBA and Macros. Now, Excel is the powerhouse of the financial world. I'm not even joking. It is literally holding the entire finance system together. If anything happened to Excel, then I think the world would stop turning. It is just the core of everything that goes on. So understanding how to do Excel really well is very important. I often do a few Excel tutorials on this channel. I haven't gone into kind of Visual Basic programming language and macros, but I guess if you wanted me to, I could just drop a comment below, hit the like button, subscribe, maybe even, I don't know, up to you. But yeah, this book is great. Again, I like to be able to speed up my work. Getting fast with Excel is really important, because being productive is something that you're going to get judged on. Meeting your KPIs, the quicker you can do things using any macros or Visual Basic is going to be really helpful. So I like to incorporate Visual Basic into a lot of the models that I do, so I can quickly add, say, capital expenditure, and that'll flow through the whole model. And making kind of these dynamic models is something that I'm really passionate about, but that's quite technical. Anyway, maybe you're not interested. Okay, the next two books are kind of in the same theme. So Oil 101, I've made a video about. This is a great book if you need to understand the oil industry, which I did at one stage. I needed to very quickly become familiar with oil and all the ways it's refined and all the different products and how it's marketed and how it's transported. This book helped me. And I think the lesson that I learned is there is a book for every industry. There's probably a leader for every industry, a book that you can quickly grab, a reference text similar to the investment banking book, where you can quickly become an expert in an industry. So in grain markets, there's also this book, Mastering the Grain Markets, How Profits Are Really Made. Again, when I needed to understand commodity marketing, I picked up this book, smashed it out, and I learned a heck of a lot about things like basis and how grain companies hedge their risk. Again, you can learn a lot by simply picking up a reference text. So a bit of holiday reading, I guess. Liar's Poker, this is a classic. All the other videos I looked through talking about this kind of investment banking stuff refer to this. I guess it's a classic, if you can call it that. It's a non-fiction, semi-autobiography by this guy, Michael Lewis. He describes his experience as a bond salesman on Wall Street during the 1980s. So it was a pretty wild time, I guess, back then, but things have changed a bit now, I think. So maybe there's some pockets of exuberant behavior, but yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one to check out on holiday. This one is another absolute classic. It's called How to Get Rich by Felix Dennis. Now, Felix Dennis was a bigger than life kind of personality in the UK business world. He wrote a lot of poetry in his later years, which you can look up. He's quite an interesting character. I really liked this book, you know, How to Get Rich, like whatever. What does that even mean? I don't know, work. His opinion is basically, you know, there's a few things you can do to improve your odds of getting rich, but for most people, they're probably not going to make it because they're not going to do all the things that he did, being very ruthless and working very, very, very hard. I don't doubt his ability to work hard. I mean, it's probably going to be a bit polarized in this book. I think some people are going to love it. Some people are going to hate it. I liked it. I kind of read between the lines, right? You can read what he says with a grain of salt in a lot of cases, but no doubt the guy's successful, right? If you look him up, Felix Dennis, he's a media, I guess, conglomerate. A lot of magazines and things like that he set up and sold and did various things. Anyway, it's a good one. Now we have this mammoth classic, What Works on Wall Street. This is a great book for people who are going perhaps into equity research investment banking. So that's where you're going to be researching stocks and coming up with strategies for perhaps the trading teams. It can be in the asset management section of an investment bank where high net worth individuals, perhaps people who have sold their business through the kind of M&A side of the investment bank, now they've got a lot of money. They put it in the asset management side, get looked after. People need to research what stocks to buy, blah, blah, blah. This is a great one. It's really interesting. They basically step through all the different strategies that have ever existed or you've ever heard about and how they've worked on Wall Street. You know, how does price to sales ratio perform? The king of value factors. Price to earnings ratio. You know, should you buy high PE stocks? Things like that. There's a whole bunch of these theories in the stock market about, you know, buying certain PEs, or there's a theory called the dogs of the Dow. Anyway, you can look all that stuff up. It's all very interesting. Okay, they're my book recommendations for people just starting out in either investment banking or private equity. Maybe they'll be helpful, maybe they won't. This is YouTube, you know, I'm just a guy on the internet telling you what I used. But, you know, there are so many good books out there that, you know, you can go and find your own as well. I mean, I like to read within my interests. I'm interested in different commodity markets, so I read a lot in that area. I'm also interested in, obviously, private equity. In fact, I might do another video if this one takes off on just books that have really helped me out in my private equity career. These ones, I guess, helped me in my early stages in finance and really leveling up quite quickly. But these days, I read more narrow kind of private equity books as well as business startup books. Anyway, that's it for me today. Hope you like it. I'm going to ask you again just to hit that like button if you can, or hit the subscribe. It actually really does help for the smaller channels to get more kind of engagement. If you can drop a comment even, I'll try and reply, tell you more about the books, or if you have a specific question about something related to finance, let me know. Make a video about it, that's cool, but I can do something specific if that's what people want as well. Otherwise, catch you next time.